Yesterday, there was another fatal shooting in the same region, and we're going to discuss it with our sister, Georgia Ford. So let's go on the clock with Georgia Ford.
Yesterday in the city of Minneapolis, we heard reports that there was another fatal shooting by police just 10 minutes away from where George Floyd was killed. So I went to the scene of where I was hearing these reports happen. It was inside an apartment building in downtown Minneapolis on Marquette between 11th and 12th. And there I learned that inside of Bolera Flats apartment, which is probably a 20-story building, there were three apartments rather, that were raided, 2 on the 14th floor and 1 on the 7th. There was a press conference held in the afternoon by the interim chief of police, Amelia Huffman. She informed the public that within 9 seconds of entering the home, the officers discovered a man with a handgun and they fatally shot him within 9 seconds. She did inform the public that officers had a key fob to enter the building. And so it is appearing that this was a situation where officers were executing a no-knock warrant on behalf of the St. Paul Police Department, which is a neighboring city. There has been other reports that that was a homicide warrant. However, the civil rights attorney, Nakima Levy-Armstrong, who was very prominent during the uprising following the murder of George Floyd, spoke with the family. Nakima reported to the public that the family says Amir Locke, who is the man who was killed yesterday, had his permit to carry. He had his conceal and carry, and so he had every right to have that gun. And according to Nakima, she says the family told her that Amir Locke was not a suspect on the search warrant. And so now the community is left with more questions than answers. And what's for certain is demands that the footage in this case be released immediately. Take a listen at what community leaders had to say last night about this fatal police shooting.
From what we understand, the gentleman was startled when people came blasting through his door, and he did what people who are legal gun owners do, which is an attempt to defend himself. And this was how he ended up dead. This is appalling to our organization, to any good people in our community would be absolutely appalled by this.
Amir was less than 25 years old. He didn't even have an opportunity to live his life the way that he should have. And it's very frustrating and upsetting to see the Minneapolis Police Department continue with business as usual. Are any of us surprised? No, we're not surprised that the culture within the Minneapolis Police Department has not changed. But we are calling upon the leadership of this city, specifically Mayor Jacob Fry, as well as Interim Chief Huffman, to work more urgently alongside of our working group in order to implement cultural changes within the Minneapolis Police Department. When I first heard about this incident early this morning, my first question was, why would MPD get involved in executing a warrant on behalf of the St. Paul Police Department? There is nothing under the law in the state of Minnesota that required the Minneapolis Police Department to get involved. They could have declined to participate, they could have deferred the matter to another agency, or they could have called upon the St. Paul Police Department to carry out its own dirty work. But instead, they acted bloodthirsty by calling in a SWAT team to come inside of this residential building that includes many families, community members, and children, some of whom were getting ready to school. And instead of being able to go about their day, they had to learn about the murder of a young black man.
And so, Ben, in reflecting on this, as well as you, Brother Mac, we're looking at the situation where the city of Minneapolis will approach 2 years since George Floyd was murdered, coming up this May. And we have to ask ourselves, a very serious question, and not just the city of Minneapolis, because I think that the murder of George Floyd influenced change across this country and across the globe. But what has changed? What has truly changed when you can drive 10 minutes away from the intersection where George Floyd died from having a knee on his neck? And here you have the same police department that is executing a search warrant on behalf of a different department. And within 9 seconds, they made a decision to take someone's life. Someone who legally, according to the family, has a right to have a gun. Someone who was not named on this search warrant, according to the family. And someone who was not aware. If those officers had a key fob and they walked in, how in 9 seconds do you have, the wherewithal to compose yourself and recognize, oh, these are police, not, just some random intruder who's trying to come in and rob my family?
Sister Ford, the thing that comes to my mind is this. When I think about a no-knock warrant, and I get how they're being used, but you would think that you got a very serious situation. Case in point, let's say you dealing with somebody on the FBI's 10 most wanted list, and they're in that particular location. I get a no-knock warrant, right? But when you look at the use of them, and I think in like the 80s, late 80s, they said that there was about 1,500 no-knock warrants issued. But by 2010, that number was up to 60 or 70,000. And now think about the impact that it has had on our community. I remember when I was president of the NAACP, I was in the role of president in the NAACP in Seattle. There was a situation that occurred before I got to that role with a brother named Bascom, where he was in his apartment. The cops, the warrant they had, first of all, they broke into the wrong apartment, number one. And when they broke into the apartment, this brother happened to be sitting on his couch with the remote control in his hand. And so the door is to his back. So when he turns around, when he hears the break-in, he turns around, they see the remote control. They call gun, shooting, killing. Nobody had charges. So these types of incidents, so there's a lot of questions that are going to come out of this situation. And I certainly appreciate you bringing this to light. But there's just a lot of things that has to be answered. Again, to your point, why does the Minneapolis police have to be involved if this is not in their jurisdiction? Why do they have to have a no-knock warrant? If the brother had a license to carry the weapon,
that's right.
And was he not on the warrant? So how does he end up dead?
That's right.
So a lot of questions.
And good morning again, Sister Ford. As they were describing, I think that was Sister Nakima describing the bloodthirstiness where they enthusiastically got involved. How do you handle that? Because when they have a no-knock warrant, but that brother had a right, if everything is they say it is, then when a person has a right to the same Second Amendment right that they talk about in this country every single day, all day long, and he has a right to be in his place of residence. But we've given the police the right to come without any 9 seconds, without a knock in 9 seconds. No knock in 9 seconds. Can you ascertain whether or not this man had the right to be in that place? Did you ascertain whether or not he had a right to carry that gun? All they did was came in guns a-blazing. And I don't know how any black person in this country stands a chance when that's the standard. And that is the standard because they only gave Tamir Rice 12 seconds.
Right. But no, they gave Amir Rice less than that. But being in Georgia, again, the situation to me is
two.
What was it? Right. God, it was fractions of a second. But the question, right. But the question remains: what was the background of this individual in which you needed a no-knock warrant? I mean, was the guy on the 10 most wanted? Did he have a history of doing A, B, C, D? What is it that made this situation so critical that you needed to enter that apartment in that manner?
Well, according to the family, Amir was not listed on the search warrant. He just so happened to be in that apartment on that day. So regardless of what the search warrant was for, you have to account for other people who are going to be within the vicinity or the household in which you're executing this no-knock warrant.
My goodness.
And, when you think about gun rights, Kyle Rittenhouse, he could tote a gun across state lines and he could use that gun to actually kill and injure people. And according to his rights, he has the right to do that. Right. But here you have a black man who, according to his family, has the right to have a gun. He's within the confines of his own home or a family's residence. And isn't that what a gun is for? If someone comes kicking in your door, isn't that the time when you most likely want to actually have a gun and be able to use it to protect your family? 9 times out of 10, if you talk to a person who has a gun in their home, that's what they say they have it there for, to protect their family in case there's a violent intruder. And in this incident, within 9 seconds, do you have the wherewithal, the capacity to make a decision on whether or not these are intruders or whether or not these are officers? If they're breaking into your house without any knocking or anything, what would you think if your door comes flying in and you hear a ton of noise and you have a gun and you have the right to have that gun? Would you not grab it?
That's what they teach us. They make us fantasize about that, Sister Ford. They show us in the movies. It's in our movies. It's in our comic books. It's in our chat rooms. Everyone is sitting around ideating over their opportunity to exercise their Second Amendment right. But when the time comes, think of the brother in the Breonna Taylor case. He also had the right to have that gun. But the no-knock warrant superseded that right. And I think that this is a question for the Supreme Court, but it's too bad it's been saddled with Donald Trump appointments.
But the other part about it, fam, is the same way that we watched our brother die in this jail cell, and as the nurse said, they treated him like an animal. It is though they use these no-knock warrants. Again, like you said, Georgia, they have to account that other people are there. But if they don't view us as people, if they don't view us with some level of humanity, it don't matter. We going in there Wild West style, guns are blazing.
When you look at Philando Castile also had his permit to have a gun. And the officer just assumed he was reaching for it. In fact, when he was reaching for his license, and that officer was not criminally charged for the way he responded. So, I mean, when you examine Second Amendment rights, if you're white, sure, you can tote your gun around, you can bring it to the Capitol, you can utilize it freely to protect yourself when you are in fear of your life. But if you're black, the Second Amendment right means a very different thing. And we have seen the cost of this exploration of just how much of Second Amendment rights we have in the Black community. We have seen this exploration paid for at the expense of Black blood.
That's right.
And Georgia, and Ben, the only time I could ever remember when blacks flexed their power with weapons and didn't get shot up was when the Panthers marched to the California State Capitol with the guns. Outside of that, Georgia, your point could not be more succinct. That Second Amendment right that America says she loves so much and goes to the citizenry of us, that don't apply when you black and you got that weapon. Oh, no, it absolutely. Stand your ground doesn't apply if you black and you got that weapon.
Come on.